Hello everyone, welcome. Thank you for joining me. In this session, we're going to focus on what's called the Pilates Roll-Up. We're going to show it first and talk about it as we go through. It's traditionally done with a pole holding on with your hands. You may use a cushion or pillow under your head. You may not. Usually start laying on your back with your legs reaching long, usually legs together with your ankles and toes and feet pointed, with your arms reaching overhead. Generally, the arms come up. You gently round your spine, making sure your spine goes through a rounding shape, flexing the ankles. Now here's the point where things may differ for a lot of different people. You can go as far as you want or only as far as your tailbone doesn't go behind you. All right, you'll find different schools do it different ways. You're going to point to roll back, and again, articulating through your spine, make sure you have a rounding sensation to return all the way down and reach. So it's just getting the spine to be rounded while moving forward and being round to roll back. If you have difficulties doing this exercise, it's not a warm-up. It should not be the first thing you do. Your spine should try twisting and then side bending and then moving your leg forward and back and to the side. So make sure you've done a general range of motion first before you practice this exercise. It's not a warm-up. Next, it's not for everybody. Everyone's leg length to torso length is different. If your leg length is shorter than the general population to your torso length, when you roll forward, if you have shorter legs here, it's going to be harder to keep those legs down because the lever length of leg to torso is different. I'm not saying it's good or bad, it's just different. So maybe you need to have your feet hooked under something to help you get your body forward. Now, is that good or bad for you? You can have the discussion with yourself, right, in terms of holding your feet down to bring your body forward. Because again, the focus of the exercise is rounding your spine, not just coming up and down off the floor. So people who have a shorter leg length to torso length bodies, I just encourage them to come only as far forward as they keep their heel bones on the floor and their lower back rounding. That means they're probably not going to come up and down all the way. And that's the version of the exercise that I do with them if we have nothing else available to us, right? If we just have no props besides a bar or not even a bar, right? They only do a halfway forward motion, only as far as their heels can stay on the floor. Because I'll say that once the heels lift off the floor and they lose contact with something, the exercise becomes more about lifting up and forward and maybe not necessarily rounding your lower back. The focus again is to round your lower back to come forward. It is helpful to have round your lower back to come forward. It is a shorter lever length on the lower back area if it's rounding versus if it's arched. If it's not round enough and you're coming forward, that's a longer lever length to that part of your body and becomes more like a flat back exercise of going back and forward. And again, it's not my place. This is not the place I want to talk about what's better or worse or good or bad for people, just about what is actually going on. So again, the focus is rounding your lower back specifically to bring your body forward. You want to encourage that as the emphasis. As you can go only as far as you get lower back rounded. And again, there is that place I talked about earlier that when you're coming forward, some schools of thought say you should only go as far forward as your tailbone does not shift backwards, right? I'm not talking about what's good or bad. There's just different variations that you'll find. So maybe some schools will tell you to only go here. Some will tell you to go further. Doesn't really matter to me. What's important is rounding your lower back and getting it to round to its maximum position as far as you have no pain or strain to your lower back area or your whole body in general. Right? Now let's say that you want to focus on this exercise, but you have a difficult time rounding your lower back. You're coming forward and you cannot feel your lower back rounding. It may not touch the floor, everyone's different, but you cannot feel that lower back rounding. You want to encourage it to round more. There's lots that you can do. You can take a block between your shins or knees. That can help facilitate a sense of inward compression, your inner thighs and your abdominals. That can help some people. Realize that when you squeeze something, specifically if it's narrow, it can be harder to move your pelvis on your femurs. That can be more difficult to actually move your body when you're squeezing something with your legs close together. So maybe something wider between your legs and squeezing is a bit more assistive for people. Taking a strap that does not stretch is really helpful for people to get a lot of support, right? The lower the block goes towards your ankles, the more encouraging it is for the feet to not come together, but then the knees might come together. The more it is in the middle, that can be helpful because the feet will get pulled together here from the strap. So just be aware of that. Where the block goes does matter. And there may have to be some thought about if the feet are coming together if it's too high, or if the knees are coming together if it's too low. Just realize that. All right? Now, your starting position here can be many different things. You can start at sitting up tall and then think of rounding your lower back, which means your tailbone is going through your legs towards your breastbone, and your lower back is changing shape. It's going into a rounded place, reaching the back of your lower back towards the floor, right? You can stay there and really try and bring your tailbone towards your breastbone, really reach the back of your pants, your waistband, towards the floor, not above the waistband, just the waistband, and then you can bring your body back up tall, right? That's one way to practice it. So here you're as tall as you can be, and you're gonna round your lower back and roll backwards. Bring your tailbone through your legs towards your breastbone and the hip bone away from the thigh bone. A strap that does not stretch here can be really helpful to help feel that motion. And then bring it up nice and tall, right? When you're using a strap, it's helpful to have the strap come from your foot to your pinky finger first. If it goes over the top of your hand, that's gonna encourage your wrist to bend, and that can be a bit difficult in terms of support. It's more supportive to have the band come to your pinky finger from your foot here in terms of alignment and control. Rounding your lower back. Hands can slide on the band a bit if that feels better for you. But again, make sure it's your waistband that you're aiming for and not above your waistband to your lower back. So when you're rolling back, you're trying to aim towards your back of your waistband to make contact with the floor, right? That's the goal there. That will really encourage more people to round their lower back. Be aware that many people may want to lean back because they lack that sense of whatever, right? That's a different exercise, not good or bad, but we're trying to get that lower back again to round and change shape, right? That is the focus there. Another way to start this position would be start in a curl shape. So your back is already rounded, it's just rounded forward. Now, you're gonna reach the waistband of your lower pants behind you to the floor here. And again, you can try and really round your spine, really squeeze your block, whatever prop you're using to help you. And you're gonna dive forward, bring your forehead towards your knees or block, whatever you're using. Again, you roll it back. Again, reaching your waistband, the back of your waistband towards the floor, not your lower back. Aim for the back of your waistband. And then bring your body forward. That's right. Again, easy. Your spine here stays rounded. You're coming forward and back with more of a round shape. Easy. It can round a little more, a little less as it goes back and forth. That's okay. Easy, breathe. Really good job. And then bring it forward. And you'll find that if you really think about where is your waistband in regard to the floor, and can that waistband make a little more contact with the floor without your lower back touching the floor, is a really helpful way to help people feel that rounding shape to the lower back, right? Now for either variation, either sitting up tall or curl forward, once your waistband makes contact with the floor, you may not get there, that may not happen for everybody, right? You either stay there and try and get more waistband on the floor, or if your waistband is on the floor, then keeping the waistband on the floor, you can reach just above the waistband, touching the floor, which would be your lower back touching the floor, right? And you come forward or sit up tall, whatever variation you're doing, right? So the first thing that you're doing is reaching the back of the waistband towards the floor, and that's the first thing. You must achieve that before you go anywhere else, right? If you're not there yet, you just try and get that waistband more to the floor. Try and imagine what would your body have to do to get more of the waistband to make contact. If your waistband comes down, once you're there, you could think, okay, what's right above my waistband is the small of your lower back. Keeping your waistband on the floor, try and get the small of your lower back to make contact with the floor. And again, that may not happen for everyone. And then you would pull forward, right? So everyone's gonna have a different degree of those things, but really you want to feel your waistband touch the floor as much as you can. That will help your spine to really, really round back there, right? So that's how you start to practice that from a seated motion. You just try and get the waistband down first. Either get more waistband. It may never come down, but that's the goal, is just to try. It's not about it's not about what the end goal is, about the journey. So just trying to get that waistband to the floor. You'll feel the work that's involved there, and you just want to do more of that, right? Once you feel what part of your body helps you get that waistband more to the floor, you would just try and increase those sensations as much as you can, and you will find, hopefully over time, that will help your waistband become more closer and closer to the floor without strain or stress. Now, not everyone's a fan of using a solid prop. A lot of people want to use a band that stretches, and that's fine too. Again, the block is your choice. If it's wide, it'll be easier to move the pelvis on the thigh bone. If the prop is narrower, it'll be harder to move your pelvis and thigh bone together, right? And it's the same thing. The stretch band offers less support, right, because it moves. So it requires a lot more awareness and strength to do that. A band that stretches gives you less support because it's movable, right? I usually start with someone with a strap that does not stretch because they can really get the support from the stability of the strap not stretching and focus really on where is that waistband, where is just above the waistband. Those are the parts of your spine that you're trying to articulate. So those two exercises in general can really help people understand at least what it is like to roll backwards and not to lean back, right? With leaning back, it's easy for me to get my middle back down without my lower back or waistband touching the floor. You want to have those pivot points of waistband first and then lower back next. And that can take quite some time for a lot of people. And for some people, again, it shouldn't be a goal. It's just not appropriate for them. And everyone's different in terms of that, right? So that's a great way to do it from a seated position. And again, it's not a warm-up. You should have moved a lot first and then come to this exercise. Now, something that you will probably not have access to is what's called a barrel. A barrel is nice because it will change the angle of your body relative to the floor, right? You would place your body on the barrel as far as you want to go. And as you bring your body forward like we did earlier, like to be straight up bent, sorry. When you're rounding, you can push your body into the barrel behind you, supporting it here through that range of motion to go forward and through the range of motion to go back. And here the barrel is higher than the floor, so it's closer to your waistband, easier to feel that. Waistband, waistband, lower back, and then continue if you want to, right? So because the barrel is at an angle, that makes the floor sequentially higher from your bum up through your ribs. It's really supportive to your lower back. You're really able to get that spine to round and have that short lever. Because again, when your spine is not rounded in your lower back, it's a longer lever and that's more aggressive on your lower back and it's closer to a flat back exercise than it is a rolling forward exercise. And that's your own providence about what you want to do there, right? How you delineate those things, those differences is up to you. But again, the barrel is nice because it elevates my ribs and upper body higher than my hips, allowing my body to have more support as I come through that range of motion. I can really feel my lower back and waistband touching the barrel to come forward. And same thing to roll back. I can really feel my waistband and then lower back touch the barrel and then mold your body to it. You can use the barrel with or without the other straps. It's the same thing, right? The strap that does not stretch is more supportive. Again, you can put something between your legs to help them have more space. Something to think about is you have more space, have your thigh bones a bit further apart, can help the femur and pelvis articulate a bit easier. So even if the focus isn't squeezing on a prop, placing a prop there can help keep the thigh bones at a distance that's easier to articulate with the pelvis. Without the prop, the band will pull your legs closer together, and that could be harder to articulate your thigh bone and pelvis. It may be a bit more difficult to get the pelvis and thigh bone to move in a rhythm, right? I'm sorry if I didn't mention that clearly enough earlier. But you may not have access to a barrel. Not a lot of people do, especially if you're doing a home practice. So let's just tuck that away. Forget we ever saw it, all right? Something else that you might see is people who are fond of placing a towel or something behind their lower back when they're laying down, either knees bent or not. So as they come forward, their lower back has something to press into. And yes, that is true. It is pressing into something that can help you feel the forward momentum. What I'd say is that is closer to a flat back exercise of leaning back and forward than rolling back and forward, right? Again, the emphasis is on the lower back rounding. And unlike the barrel, which was at an incline relative to the floor, here, because you're not at an incline to the floor, you just have something under your lower back, you are changing the emphasis. It's different than using a barrel because most likely your lower back cannot round as much as it was on the barrel. So this, with the towel, is closer to that flat back sensation of coming forward and back. Right? So that's what I'd say about that. Joseph Pilates, the originator of this, what we call this, recommended elevating your feet on a block with straight legs. And that decreases the angle of the femur relative to the pelvis, and that can make it a lot easier for people. You don't see that variation a lot nowadays, but that is what I recommended. You can also just bend your knees, and it's very similar, right? If my legs are straight on the floor, or my femur is at a specific angle to my pelvis, right? If I bend my knees a little bit, my femur is a little closer to the front of my pelvis, from my femur and pelvis. If I put my legs on the block, again, same angle, right? The top of the front of the femur, thigh bone's closer to the front of your pelvis. Both are the same kind of thing. Legs on the block offers a longer length lever, right? So if my client has shorter legs compared to their torso, I might choose to have legs long and elevated on a block to help them feel that articulation of their lower back versus shortening that lever even more, right, by bending their knees, right? So that could be a really helpful thing to think about. If your client has shorter legs relative to their torso, having those legs long could be helpful, but if you want to have that thigh bone, the front of your thigh bone be closer to your pelvis to start, elevate their feet on something supportive. And again, try to encourage those heel bones to stay in contact with, just so they're not lifting those legs up and again, becoming something else that's not about rounding your lower back to come forward. It becomes more about just coming forward any way that you can. You really want to keep those heel bones connected down to something for this roll-up exercise. Other exercises where we don't do that, that's why I'm not saying it's good or bad, but in this exercise, the heels need to make contact with something the whole time. Now, we're holding on to something that may seem arbitrary, but it is not. Because holding on to something encourages the whole body to engage. You can think of maybe pushing your arm bones together to come forward. That will help engage the front of your torso, which is really nice. You can also think of pulling the bar apart when you roll back, and that can help you really feel the back of your body engaging when you roll back, especially your shoulder girdle to roll down. You can also pull the bar apart to come forward, and that may give you different feelings. You can also squeeze the bar together. Now, again, it'll help you feel the front of your body when you come down. You can also squeeze the bar together to come forward, and squeeze the bar together to roll back. Right? You can also pull the bar apart to come forward, pull the bar apart to go back. You can also not focus on those things, not squeezing or pulling, and just having something with your upper body to go in synchronicity with can be really, really helpful. You can also use weights in your hands, right? You can use a weighted bar or two separate weights. That would be more assistive generally rolling forward and back, because as the weights come forward, you have more weight than you would normally to help push your body forward, right? That may not be the best option for everyone, because everyone's different. If the arms are not able to get long enough over your center of gravity, that may not be enough assistance for some people, right? Again, everyone's different, everyone's shaped different. And again, this exercise is not necessarily for everybody. The emphasis is rounding your lower back and getting your body to be aware of, oh, my lower back has movement capacity to it. I can round it, and I can arch it, or I can come between. That's really the emphasis. What we're trying to go for here generally is getting awareness that your lower back has the capacity to move. And when is it moving, when is it not moving, what's going on with it, right? So it's not about just coming up and down off the floor. It's about articulating that lower back. And that's where teaching in a group environment can be really challenging, because attendees of the class will see other people around them coming up, and they'll feel bad if they're not also coming up, right? That's just natural. So it's helpful to encourage people to do what works for their body, and make sure I'm very clear that you should be only coming up with these parameters in mind. If you can't come up, don't worry about it. It's not a judgment on you. It's not like you're not trying. It's just that everyone's different, right? And that could be frustrating. That's why group environments are very, very challenging. All right, and again, using a pillow for your head can be helpful, because many people lay on their back and their head kind of tilts backwards, and that can make the first part really quite challenging in terms of their head-neck articulation to come forward. All right, so those are the major basics for the roll-up and how to help people achieve that. Again, the emphasis is getting that spine, specifically your lower back, the whole spine, to round to go forward. That's the goal. There are other ways to go forward and back, right? It would be called more of a flat back version. That's the different exercise. This exercise is emphasizing the rounding to come forward. Placing something under your lower back when you come forward decreases the emphasis of the exercise, specifically because of how you're related to gravity, to the floor, right? When you have something under your lower back, it's harder to get that lower back to run. It becomes more that flat back hinging sensation. Not good or bad, just different. The barrel's more assisted because it's less of that hinging sensation. You're rounding to go forward directly, potentially. Again, so long as your lower back is actually articulating and moving through those positions, right? The barrel alone is not assistive enough to make sure the lower back is articulating. You have to really encourage people to be aware of what the goal of the exercises are, right? Is your spine rounded to come forward? How are you rolling back to the barrel or the floor? The props themselves are not going to cure the exercise. It takes a lot of the participants' own engagement with their own practice to meet those parameters and to find out what those goals are for themselves. So I hope that was helpful. Again, the emphasis is rounding specifically your lower back to go forward and rounding specifically your lower back to roll back, but also your whole spine in general. Those are the parameters, and keeping your heel bones on the floor to help make sure that it doesn't become just about the front of your hip pulling your body forward in whatever shape the body may or may not be in, right? That's why I encourage that. Keeping the heels on the floor, A, that's this exercise. B, it really encourages people to become aware that you are trying to round your spine to come forward and not come up any way that you can. People, I mentioned earlier, people do hook their feet under like a strap or a piece of furniture, and that can change the exercise, right? Specifically because it's much easier to do that with a flat back motion coming forward, not good or bad, just a different exercise, and a flat back to roll back. Anchoring your feet down does not necessarily mean that your client will round their lower back to come forward, or you, I should say, it's not just for instructors, right? So I hope that was helpful. My name is Eric. This is Nucleus Strength. I look forward to getting stronger and healthier with you in the future. You're always in good health. Take care.